Just a remarkable place.
The American Riviera that's in and around this part of the world that has got to be the best part of our country from a geography and weather and climate and vibe thing.
If this isn't one of the coolest pieces of real estate I've seen in a long time, Eric, I don't know what is. Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Estate Anonymous Podcast. Today we are heading to Santa Barbara, the American Riviera, as we affectionately call it. Unbelievable, iconic property, a former mission and theological school, with mountain views of the ocean, truly remarkable stuff. It's in an auction. I think the co-hosts would love to own it, so it'll be a lot of fun. Hope you enjoy giving it a listen. Welcome in, everyone. Real Estate Anonymous Podcast. We are down one or two of the amigos today. Michael Girdley is off.
Cutting dead weight.
He's did he say it was is Michael at a plushie convention? Is that what those is? Or the furries? Is that what those, where they say? So you have it on good authority here that Michael Girdley is a furry, and he's off on one of those conventions. And then Brett Moss, our tried and true third wheel, is I don't know what he's doing today, but he is currently occupado. So Elliott White and mi amigo Eric Weatherholtz are here chopping it up this morning.
Third wheel is a good way to refer to Brett, I think.
So we got a really cool deal today in Santa Barbara. A lot of people know about it. We'll get into that in a minute. Eric and I were talking a bit before we clicked record, and we're just talking about the real estate business is generally your whole life is just trying to go down this one path. You know, it's you're a retail developer or you're an office developer, and your life is pursuit of decent deals that you can do, and you just need to look at a lot of them, trying to do ones that work. But every now and then in that pursuit, you see some sort of weird thing by the side of the road. And it happens to be an incredible opportunity. Eric and I were talking about some of those. Some we can talk about on the air, some we can't. But just the weird nature of real estate is that if you keep your eyes open to the possibility that you might see something different in your pursuit of the thing you know pretty well, you can make a lot of money off on the side of the road. So, Eric, is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, I think there's if you look at anybody that's made any kind of dough investing as an investor as opposed to a manager of investments, anybody that's really hit it seems like it always boils down to less than a handful of deals in an entire life, like maybe 5. Even if somebody's done 100 things or 200 things, there's a very small percentage of them that produces the really outsized return. And then the other thing I've seen is it's like often those things are not what what they're even known for.
Right. They're not what you set out to do. You just found it.
Yeah. Not completely related, but there's a guy, I won't say who it is, but started a name brand restaurant chain and then was also in the real estate development business. Those were his 2 things, and is exceptionally rich, but all the money came from a small investment he made in a biotech startup. I think he made a good amount of money in the other 2 things, but I bet 80% of what he's got came from something unrelated.
I've got a good buddy of mine who is he's the founder. He's no longer involved with the business. The business got bought out, but it's a well-known national Italian food chain. And he's a Boston guy. He got his start. He had one restaurant in Boston, and it was just a little pizza shop, and he had a delivery van. And they weren't doing a ton of delivery. He was trying to figure out how to get some money together for his second store. The store was doing well. They weren't doing a ton of delivery. He's just strapped for cash, like all restaurateurs. And one night, him and one of his townie friends drank a bunch and then threw a Molotov cocktail through the front of the delivery van and burned it to the ground. And they got the insurance proceeds from the van, and that was enough to open the second restaurant. And then from the second restaurant, it turned into a big national chain. I'm not at all, and don't ask me. I won't respond to DMs asking what the chain was, but it's a phenomenal story. People in the Boston restaurant business have heard it and know it relatively well, but great way to get started.
From Dorchester.
Yeah. You know what they call Dorchester Ave? They call it Dot Ave. Dorchester is often referred to as Dot Ave. We got a pretty cool one today. We are in Santa Barbara, and I'm going to share my screen here so folks can see this. We'll talk about this one as well. All right. So this, goddamn, if this isn't one of the coolest pieces of real estate I've seen in a long time, Eric, I don't know what is, but it's a former Santa Barbara Mission and Theological College, and it's on a big campus, and it's being auctioned off. The starting bid is a $14 million, $1 million bid increments. Current ask is $15 million. I shudder to think about where this thing will go, but my guess is it gets quite a big number. Let me get you some details on the property. So it's 123,000 roughly square feet. It's 6 mixed-use buildings, 6 classrooms, some kind of movable offices, and it's 11.3 acres in Santa Barbara. I don't know what 11 acres in Santa Barbara is worth, but I'm confident it's worth quite a lot. It's this great kind of Spanish-style architecture with the stucco walls and the terracotta roofs, and they got the perfect shot of the sun, I guess, coming up in Santa Barbara in the morning. Super cool space. I don't really know what I'd do with it, and I'm very excited to talk with Eric about this because I think Eric knows what he would do with it. Let me maybe give a quick. I'll just kind of read the description here so folks know what's going on. It's 2300 Garden Street, part of the original Santa Barbara Mission lands. It was a college and a private school dating back to the 1900s. The site has 6 large structures, a multi-purpose sports field, tennis court, gardens, additional kind of movable classrooms, parking lots, 360-degree views of the Pacific Ocean and the Santa Ynez Mountains. It's zoned for educational. It's 11.3 acres. I'm confident you can get it rezoned. It's just a remarkable place. So, Eric, you've got money and you're not necessarily overly concerned with your initial return.
Money's the right statement. I think if in the greatness of America, there is this part of our country, the American Riviera, that's that's in and around this part of the world, that has got to be the best part of our country from geography and weather and climate and vibe thing. I've got a close friend whose mother up the road from this is where people can taste it, is a place called San Ysidro Ranch. It's a fantastic resort. They're not far away, and the best Trump move that I've ever seen is this guy's mom, instead of going to a retirement home, spent the last 20 years of her life living at the San Ysidro Ranch in a casita there. And then all around that, through Montecito and that whole area, is some of the most fabulous residential real estate that exists in the country. So all that to be said, my first reaction is, how could you make this a house?
Yeah, right. You think there's a buyer here?
For 14 million and have your own Hearst Castle or better, count me in.
What percentage of the total capital is going to be laid out for the purchase, and what percentage is going to be for improvements to the building and renovations? You think it's 20% is what you're going to pay for the building, and the rest is what you're going to have to
I think if this were maybe it's a resort, maybe it's a we could have fun and go down, calling it a single family home. But I think to have something of this quality in that kind of a location, to give it its due is $700 a square foot of construction cost, reconstruction cost. I think that would be sort of the entry point, and probably go up from there.
I would encourage you all to check this place out. You can find it on LoopNet. There's not a ton for sale in Santa Barbara, and this one's 2300 Garden Street. God damn if this isn't cool. It's just got such a great look to it. It really does. And
the thing about auctions, I don't know if you've ever done this, but a friend a couple of years ago there was a hotel in a resort area that he was interested in, and kind of conned me into going along for the ride. The opening bid was set at $1 million on something that was clearly worth more than that. But this was at a time when the market was somewhat depressed, and this was a small property. In my mind, I thought the thing had to be worth, at least $3 million. And so anyway, he went in, and the way those things work is you have to do your due diligence beforehand. He went in and took tours of the property, had some engineers walk through it. And then the day of the auction came, and you had to have, if you win the auction, you've got to come up with the money that day or within a short period of time. And you had to put up some sort of a deposit on the day. And the auction was started at $1 million, and he was gung ho to go to $3 million. And as the auction opened, he made the first bid, and I got very nervous because we were the winners of this bid, and I was going to have to scramble to come up with my share, in short order. But the auction closed at 5 p.m. and no other bids. We were the only bid at like 4:45, and I was in a bit of a panic, thinking we're going to have to buy this hotel that I'm not that thrilled about. But anyway, within the last 15 minutes, all the bids came in at a flurry, and the thing ended up selling at like $8.5 million. So on this sort of a thing, but on this sort of a thing, having, sometimes those entry prices are kind of the 14 million or whatever it is as the opening bid or minimum bid. Those become, just sort of bait to increase the thing.
A rounding error.
What would you do with it?
Boy, I mean, we've been scrolling through pictures here while Eric's been talking. It's, kind of looks like a school, as you would expect. That's what it was used for, but I assume you're going to scrape it out. I think
University of Elliott.
Yeah. I teach people how to sell courses on Twitter. Man, my gut says you're doing kind of a high-end boutique hotel here, and maybe because you got 11 acres, you could also split up and do a few pretty cool residences. I think it's going to be hospitality. I think a big spa. I think you're going to lean into the California deal a ton and make it a really interesting place for families to come. Obviously, affluent families. You could rent it out as a hotel with a wedding venue. It's got this amazing view of the Pacific Ocean and this beautiful mountain range behind it. That's not my space, but when I see something like this, I think there's some super talented hotel developers. There's guys who I know out on Nantucket, a group called Blue Flag Development. And I don't know how their business model works. I don't know if they make money or lose money. I assume they're making money because they're growing. But they've got such an eye for hospitality and unique design in really cool kind of boutique hotel experiences. They're not the only ones out there, but I've really seen some talented folks who are in this space who I think could come in, buy a property like this, turn it into this really nice hotel. Maybe it's 40 keys or something like that, and some residences next to it. Man, I think it'd be pretty slick.
The reality of California, this really is exquisite. it looks this could be a villa on Lake Como, but it's these sorts of exquisite properties are best suited for the California coast. But the reality of what comes with the California coast is layers upon layers of gotchas in terms of the ability to make changes to this. So, having this would be a really big undertaking just to understand what you could do. Things like coastal commission and soil stabilities and local zoning requirements and construction requirements, earthquakes, all that kind of stuff can make development or redevelopment in coastal California something that takes decades. So understanding that would be a huge undertaking. But let's unpack that. Let's just say you wanted to buy this and talk out loud about the process that you'd have to go through to get comfortable to even jump into this auction.
Well, let's assume I was comfortable with the what I affectionately call the California. So let's say I was kind of a local warlord who knew that it was going to take a while, but I knew the steps involved to get a project approved.
Let's just say it's I think my first call would be finding. I'd have to find an attorney. Yeah, I'd got to have. That's my first call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
First thing. First call. Yeah. All right. So let's just assume I'm me, and I'd like to get comfortable here. Yeah. I'm really splitting my due diligence up into two things. I'm splitting it up into the physical diligence, and I'm splitting it up into the kind of what are my options diligence. And for that, you need a great zoning attorney. You probably also want to get in touch with the elected officials who this property is in their district to ask them what they would like to see done here. I assume something like this has been a conversation in town of what are they going to do with the old college, right? I mean, someone has said this before. So I'm reaching out to local elected officials where this is in their district. I'm reaching out to the mayor's office. I'm really making a call to anyone who will talk to me. And I'm not asking them, if you're listening and you're wanting to do something like this, do not call your elected officials and tell them your stupid fucking plan. Elected officials like to be the ones to give you some guidance. They like to hear themselves talk. So even if you have a plan in the back of your mind, the correct phone call is, I'm interested. I think it's a beautiful property. We'd love to put roots down here in this community and own this long term. Has there been any thought from the city around what you would like to see done here? Are there any particular needs, any projects that you think would be exciting? That's a great way to open a conversation. If you're skilled enough, you can gently lead them down the road of what you think should be done here. But in general, I would ask first, because often they'll tell you what they would like to see done and what the neighbors might support. And getting a deal approved in California is going to be tough. So I'm going to the extent that it works for my business plan, I'm going to try and follow the path of least resistance to get this thing approved. I'm going to engage a local zoning attorney. I'm going to have them do an abstract of here's what needs to happen. And once I've got the abstract of like roughly here's the timeline, so you can do this, and then you go before this board, you need this board and this board. I'd pay that attorney to give me a breakdown of what has to happen, and I'd meet with my local officials. And that's probably the first thing I'm doing on the what could be done side. And then on the physical diligence, I'm bringing my designers, my architects, my structural engineers. I'm bringing my team through here. I will have some idea of what I'd like this property to look like. I will have communicated that to all those people so that they're looking at it through that lens. And I want to know, is it possible? How much work needs to be done to get it ready for that use? What's going to cost? What's the best massing and site layout and all that kind of stuff. I think you're gutting everything that isn't the walls, right? I think you are taking this thing down to the studs. There's kitchens and classrooms and all that. I think all that's old and has to get just torn out, and you're just keeping this beautiful exterior. And you're looking at the shell and saying, inside this shell, what can I create? I think you're right, Eric.
And the cool part is, I bet there are no studs in this. I think this is all like,
yeah, right.
yeah. I think the other, once you see all those layers of stuff, you got political considerations, you've got legislative considerations, you've got construction considerations, you've got all these things that any one of them could squash this deal. These also are the kind of properties that you could see with a chain link fence, a 10-foot chain link fence around it for a couple of decades because nothing could ever get done with it. So all those things could squash this deal. You've got this incredible, unbelievable upside of what would be one of the most exquisite jewels of hospitality and residential real estate in the country, and side by side at this huge risk that possible risk that nothing ever happens. And then the third layer of this is combining it with an auction format, which to me is what makes this interesting in a way, because if you had time to deal with this, you would end up paying a higher price. If you really had to, if you really wanted to do this right, it would take you a year at least to get this closed. And going through all the steps that you talked about in this situation where there's a auction format, that's not going to happen. And you're going to have to buy this,
you own
like it or not, which in a weird way is kind of the opportunity. I always love that Warren Buffett quote that price is my due diligence. And so so if this was $1, even if you had to pay the taxes, you're going to buy it, right? If it was $2, you're going to buy it. If it was $100, $100,000. So there's a number that you're like, I don't care about all those really real, massive, big risks. And I've got to believe that it trades at a really compelling price unless you have an insider. I think three things would make that not happen. You have an insider that feels comfortable with all those hoops and has already done all this work, or it doesn't sell, or a moron buys it.
It says no reserve.
Yeah, incredible.
It'll sell. Okay. Eric, why would something like this go to auction and not be put out on the market in sort of a more traditional process, knowing that the highest and you're going to get the most value? If I own this deal and I wanted to extract the most dollars from it, I would say to you, Eric, why don't you buy this thing? We're going to agree to a price. You're going to give me, $100,000 non-refundable deposit after 30 days, but you don't have to close this thing for 2 years.
No, you'd run a full process with the best and the brightest, and you'd have, Mr. Caruso and some of the high-end home builders and some of the top hoteliers around to take a look at it, pick one and go through that process with them, and probably even, retain an interest in it. But to me, these kind of situations, and we've had a phenomenal success with something that was like this, where you had a quasi-institutional group, and the one that we were involved with was a charitable organization that just went through their process and said, we are going to arm's length sell this by auction, so that in their mind got the best process. They weren't set up to make those decisions that you're talking about, to pick the person, and it's fully defensible that we advertise it wide and we put it out to bid, and we're going to get the price that the market bears. I think in this case, it ends up, there's a small chance that somebody ends up with a really terrific deal here.
I think that's right, because the seller has clearly said, I want out and we will take the market clearing number. And they could get more money. they're not dumb. Like someone has said to them, you'll get more money if you give someone time to close it. And they just said, no, for a whole bunch of reasons that are specific to us, we aren't going to do that. We need the money now.
We're done. We're wrapping up this estate or whatever it is, and we're out. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue that thought of, so you get down, I think we get the attorney, we find out the local landscape, we find out all the gotchas that are in the, political and governmental arenas. We talk through, have some contractors and engineers and consultants go through the building and come up with the gazillions of dollars that you're going to have to spend some time with designers and come up with a plan. And then you, like any other thing, would back into a price of what this thing could be worth. But again, we don't have the luxury of that time here. So thinking of this deal in specifics, does it have a date? When is the auction date?
It's happening now. It's live.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. So 6 days, you're going to have the opportunity to have a handful of phone calls. I'm
going to follow this auction, Eric. We will find out about this.
Another thing that happens in these auctions, sort of an interesting side business, properties like this, is the auction companies where they'll go recruit a couple of straw men to come in and start bidding on this.
Right, because they'll have a read on where they think it might trade, right? So they'll try and push someone around there.
Yeah, so what happens is they'll recruit find some rich person and say, we think this thing's going to sell for, 10 million. We'll pay you some amount of money. Let's just say $1 million. And you run the thing up to at least 8 million. And you're not going to end up having to buy it. And you'll get $1 million for your trouble. You're taking the small risk that if you are at 8 million and nobody else bids, you're going to have to end up owning it. And so there's a small chance you're going to have to come up with the 8 million, but you're probably not. And here's $1 million for your trouble. So there's sort of the side business that the game is a little bit, there's very much some rigging that goes on in this auction world. And there's been several cases where these people have, these straw men have been brought in, maybe didn't understand the whole thing, thought they were getting a check. All they had to do was, do this and get a check for $1 million, but ended up being forced to close on properties like this. But anyway, let's just say 6 days, you get to talk to an attorney, and let's just say that the response is you can do what you want with this thing. We think that my opinion is the governing bodies would be supportive of it, and let's say you also talk to a boutique hotel consultant who says, yeah, we think this is supportable. And, here's what kind of room rates, and you come up with what you think the cost would be, and you back into a number that back of the napkin math, it's worth $15 million. Let's just say that's what you can come up with in 6 days. What would you, just for sport now, it's probably worth 15. There's a good chance it's worth 15. Where do you stop bidding, knowing what we know today?
I'd probably stop at 16, right? Because if it's worth 15, I'm going to want it. And at 16, it probably still works. I think my strategy would be I would never want to be the lead bid until like the last 30 seconds, right? And so you're just sort of hanging around. And if someone bids 10 million, I'd wait half a day or a day, and I'd come in at like 10,500,000. it's $1 million increments, so you come in at 11. But I don't know that you don't want to get close to your top number before the end of the auction. And you almost think, even if you're looking at this deal, the only bid is 12 million and you are 30 seconds from the end of the auction and it's worth 15 million to you, I would bid the 15
Right.
so you get it. Because where you would kick yourself is if you bid 13 and some guy bids 14 and they steal it from you and you would have been happy to own it at 15.
Yeah. These things also have such an emotional investment in them. That hotel deal that I mentioned to you, I didn't even really like that property, and I was super glad that it didn't work out. But by the time that you've gotten there, you get the one thing auctions are good for is you do end up with a little bit of deal fever, and you want to see it. You want to see it through. So, yeah. So if you've gotten yourself mentally, and maybe that's the lesson is don't make the first bid unless you're prepared to make the last bid. But once you've gone through the hoops to at least make a bid, you've got this mental investment in it that's going to, probably push you to see the thing through.
I like it. It's beautiful, and it could be remarkable in the right hands. And to be clear, those are not my hands.
But there are hands out there for this.
Yeah, there are hands out there. I always use the analogy that I don't know how to DJ, but I can tell you when a DJ sucks. I kind of think the same thing about hotels. I couldn't design a beautiful place, but I can immediately tell the difference between a wonderful hotel and
this one's already designed for you for the most part.
Yeah. This one, you really just have to not mess it up. You're cleaning up the outside to the extent that you can, and then you're really designing the inside around the outside. Like whatever vibe the outside is giving off, you're just going to try and pull that into the center of the hotel.
No, this is fantastic. This is one of those things that would be an honor to be involved with. And maybe there's an outside chance that in an auction process, somebody ends up with a screaming deal. Let's follow along and find out.
We'll see. I sent the listing to a friend of mine who works that market. He said it was for sale last year, maybe earlier. Didn't trade. Iconic property, but I think you're pretty limited in what you can do with it. Yeah, that sounds right.
Is that the pod?
I think that's it. You got anything else you want to add?
Let's follow along.
All right. Sounds good to me, sir.